What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So when it comes to Major League Baseball, right, as a youngster growing up back in the day, there were certain marks that a player would reach, certain milestones, and it was just a lock for the Hall of Fame. For pitchers, it would be 3,000 strikeouts or or 300 wins. Like that's a lock. And for hitters, it's two different numbers. If a hitter got 3,000 hits, you're in the Hall of Fame. And if you were a power hitter, if you got 500 home runs, that was a lock. Now, what's interesting is that over time, the 300 wins thing it's not the standard is dropping, and I understand why because um, pitchers don't pitch as many innings as they once did. Um, a lot of times teams have a platoon of pitchers, so wins are not being monopolized by 4 or 5 pitchers anymore as much. So, maybe that figure is going to be more like 225 or 250 now. The strikeouts are still there. I guess 3,000 hits still is generally a lot. But no longer is 500 home runs a lock to be in the Hall of Fame. It's no longer a lock. Jose Canseco was chasing that ghost. Jose Canseco was chasing 500 home runs. Injuries robbed him of that opportunity. When he retired in 2001, the same year as his Bash brother co-star Mark McGwire, he retired with 462 home runs, 462. But even if he reached 500 home runs, there's no way in hell that Jose would have gotten the Hall of Fame. Because you look at the players who have gotten 500 and still aren't in the Hall of Fame, it goes to show you how much the steroid era has been tainted. When you look at, guys like Rafael Palmeiro, when you look at the guy that has 600 home runs and is not voted in and will never be voted in, most likely, and Sammy Sosa. When you look at Manny Ramirez, who hasn't been voted in, and that used to be the standard. Another guy that hit 500 home runs and will probably never get in, even though I do think he's a Hall of Famer, is Gary Sheffield. Gary Sheffield played for 22 big league seasons from 1988 to 2009. Played a very long time. And he played for various teams. Maybe that hurts him as well because he played for so many different franchises. But it was a 15-year window where he was one of the best hitters in the game. He could hit for a decent average. For his career, I believe he was over 290. I want to say it was 292. He had 509 home runs, almost 1,700 RBI, and he won a World Series title back in 1997 with the Florida Marlins, who at the time was a new franchise. You know what I'm saying? They were one of the newer franchise in the league. And not only that, he was a 9-time All-Star, a 5-time Silver Slugger, and 6 times Gary Sheffield finished in the top 10 of MVP voting. And, he won a batting title with the San Diego Padres, and he's only one of 2 players to win a batting title with that franchise. The other one being, of course, the late, great Tony Gwynn. But with all of that and the 509 home runs, Gary Sheffield most likely will not get into the Hall of Fame because of his link to possible steroid use. Now, I'm making this video because I really want to see how these voters are voting this year. Is it possible that enough time has elapsed since the 90s and into the 2000s where you have a new generation of voters who are not as emotionally uh, involved or attached, I guess I should say, to that whole situation? Or maybe time has healed some wounds. People are able to look at these guys' career as a whole and not attach them to one possible situation, which they may not even be guilty of. The first few years that Gary Sheffield was eligible for the Hall of Fame, he only got 10 to 15% of the vote. You need 75% to be inducted. But the last couple of years, he's been shooting up. Well, no pun intended. He's been going up in the Hall of Fame voting. In 2020, he got over 30% of the vote. Last year, he got over 40% of the vote. So he's going in the right direction. The problem is, can he go all the way up to the 75% threshold to be inducted into the Hall of Fame? I don't know about that. And then once he falls off the ballot in that scenario, then you have to wait to be possibly inducted into by the Veterans Committee, and they only meet every 4 years, and then you have to have a certain time period to wait until you fall on the ballot with them. So I don't know. It's unfortunate, but like I said before, man, it's gonna piss a lot of people off if people like Gary Sheffield, people like Roger Clemens, and people like Barry Bonds continue to be left out of the Hall of Fame because of suspicion. But then you vote in people like Alex Rodriguez, right? And then you vote in people like, even though he's a great all-time hitter, David Ortiz, who also been linked to steroid use. Why is that? Is because they were more media friendly? If that's the case, that's bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So to me, from watching Sheffield, you know what I'm saying, I think he's a Hall of Famer. On any given year, he can hit 300. He'll give you 30 to 35 home runs. He'll knock in 100 RBIs. Uh, he could hit for power, but he didn't strike out a lot. I always thought he had one of the greatest batting stances when his bat, you know what I'm saying, he's at the plate and he has a cold death stare at the pitcher and his bat going back and forth like a cat about to pounce on a fucking mouse or some shit. And then when he caught that motherfucker, he used to do like the little leg switch. He would uh, do the leg switch and look at the fucking home run. And man, that nigga had the coldest stance, man. But I'm like a shuffle. I guess I should say he did like a little shuffle after he would connect. But anyway, I think Gary Sheffield should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, this was 20 years ago. It's questionable, but the standards have fallen so much. I'm like, okay, look, man, Buck O'Neil. I hate to keep picking on Buck O'Neil. He's deceased. But if Buck O'Neil gets into the Hall of Fame, Buck O'Neil, I mean, was a real good player, I guess, for most people, observations in the Negro Leagues. But Hall of Famer, I think he was good from from people said about him. But then you keep out guys like Sheffield, and I don't know, man. But tell me what you guys think.